Right, we'll bring you more from what came out of the commission with SABC News reporter Bulelani Phillip in a short while. Now, the Ad Hoc Committee sitting at Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Facility in Pretoria has heard testimony from controversial businessman Vusimuzi Cat Matlala. Now, Matlala began by outlining his business interests, confirming that he provided security services to several Gauteng schools and to the now deceased Santaco taxi boss Jonathan Msibi. He's also stressed that Msibi was strictly a client, denying any personal relationship. But the tone shifted when Matlala was pressed on the SABC tender scandal. He grew visibly reluctant, offering limited answers. However, he did confirm that he holds a lease agreement with the Department of Public Works to convert SABC training college premises into a clinic, insisting the lease is not under legal dispute. On the controversial SAPS tender itself, Matlala refused to elaborate, fueling speculation about the depth of his involvement and leaving MPs demanding clarity.
So the lease for, I think, for the past 3 years. So when they're saying I knew about I'll get a tender, for me does not add up. Because I can remember that my first engagement with Public Works, it was somewhere around 2021. And that was far from the tender being even advertised. So where the hospital is inside the training college of SAPS. So I just learned that the students who are training inside there by the college, sometimes they get injuries, or even when they're sick or whatever, they have to go to the nearest hospital, which is outside the premises of SAPS. So I wanted to use that hospital as an opportunity for them to render the services for them.
All right, now more on our top story. The Ad Hoc Committee sitting at the Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Facility in Pretoria has heard testimony today from controversial businessman Vusimuzi Cat Matlala. Matlala began by outlining his business interests, confirming that he provided security services to several Gauteng schools and to the now deceased Santaco taxi boss Jonathan Msibi. Joining us for more on this is SABC News reporter Bulelani Phillip, who's at the Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Services facility in Pretoria to bring us the very latest. Good afternoon, Bulelani. It seems the committee, encountering a bit of problems there when it comes to Cat Matlala at just the beginning of his testimony, where he was pushing back to say he wouldn't want to incriminate himself insofar as divulging or answering to certain questions. Just share with us what the committee has heard thus far.
Well, good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and to the viewers at home. Of course, you must know that Vusimuzi Cat Matlala came into this ad hoc committee having some reservations about the time that he was allocated to actually consult his lawyers in order to be able to be fully prepared for these hearings. But in the end, he has agreed that he is going to take part in these hearings. However, he did actually point out that the statement that is before him, he only got sight of it this morning after his lawyers actually gave it to him this morning. So he's saying that he's identified several mistakes that would need to be corrected. And on the other hand, lawmakers are saying that, you know, they would rather prefer a statement that is signed by the witness. But however, in the end, given the constraints of time by the committee, they've allowed the leeway that the statement that was also submitted to the members electronically would be considered. But they are saying as well that the oral evidence is actually the better evidence that they are looking for. But the EFF wanted, the MK party wanted the proceedings to be postponed for at least an hour for Matlala to consult his lawyers and finalize that statement. But the majority of the political parties actually pushed for the proceedings to go ahead. So at the moment, the proceedings have just started with the preliminary work. And as you've indicated, they're going through the business interests and how Cat Matlala actually became a businessman. And he's saying that he had been working in the informal economy in the early 2000s. And he did concede as well that he does have a conviction of selling stolen goods. While he was actually sentenced to 4 years, that was commuted to correctional supervision. And he also outlined that his first formal business was registered in 2017. A year later, he then registered the company Medicare Tshwane District, which is the company that secured that controversial 360 million health risk services tender with the police. Of course, that tender has since been cancelled. And of course, the evidence leaders have been pushing him to actually push the argument that that contract was actually secured under false pretenses, because the documentation or the capacity that Matlala was relying on was actually not that of his, but that of a holding company in the name of Medicare Holdings, which is owned by a neighbor who lives with him in his estate, Mr. Mike van Wyk, as well as another director of that company, Rian Venter. But Matlala has also actually tried to deny that that contract was actually secured as part of Frantic. So at the moment now, he's going to take this lunch hour break to further consult with his lawyer, so that when he comes back after lunch, all of these concerns that is had on whether he wants to give limited information so that he does not incriminate himself in future police investigations. So he needs to clarify rather that with his lawyer, so that at least when he's cross-questioned by the evidence leaders, he's able to have that comfort that any information that he gives before the Ad Hoc Committee will not be used against him in future. Mfundo.
Bulelani, thank you very much for that reportage. That's SABC News reporter Bulelani Phillip, who's reporting to us from the Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Facility in Pretoria.